and say, let's get going. Okay, so this week you get me. Sorry about that, but it's about the project that I did last year that I really wanted to talk about because it went so well and I found it so exciting. What is really sad is that my organisation has closed that entire adult literacy course, both face-to-face and online. So I just find something that works with these students and I can't do it anymore. But I'm sure I'll find ways of adapting this to use with other students. And it was very exciting while it happened. Okay, I've called it Extraordinary Literacy Learning because that was a way to make it make sense. The title of the project was actually Extraordinary Learning for a Digital Age, which shortened itself nicely to something you could say called ELSADA. And I did it that way because I really hate projects with long titles that everybody has to say and then they get shortened to something that doesn't make sense. So I chose something that made an acronym that was sayable. Throughout this, if anyone's got any questions, please put in text chat or put your hand up or whatever, and I'll try and include the answer to the question in what I'm saying. I'm also going to try and include some interactive stuff, not quite the same as usual, a bit different, because what I'm doing with this is I'm doing it very similarly to the way I did a face-to-face one for my college in our innovations workshop. Okay, this is a funded project. We won some funding from the National Vocational E-Learning Strategy, which is an Australian, because we're not all Australians here, this is an Australian initiative that is to do with encouraging e-learning, particularly in vocational education and training, and also in adult and community education. But a lot of the stuff transfers across and people are actually using lots of the resources and ideas in schools as well. And it's quite it's been around for a long time, but it's been rebadged as the National Vocational E-Learning Strategy. It's been around for about 10 years, and it's been very effective in increasing interest in e-learning in the vet sector. Now later you're going to need to use, I mean you're all online anyway, so you'll just presumably just do it through your browsers, but when I did this face-to-face, I did it so that people could use their phones for voting, because I hadn't got access, they hadn't got access to Blackboard Collaborate. It was a face-to-face session. Okay, so what we're going to look at is the delivery model I used and some of the tools, and I'm going to give you links so that you can look at student blogs and what the students' activities were. And then we're going to think about how it might relate to a different context. For example, anybody who's got their own students, your students, and how it might work with them, or some of the aspects of it might work with them. Okay, so the project aim was to get better student outcomes by increasing engagement and motivation. The target group for this were certificate and general education for adult students. Now we do get a lot of very young students in this course, and in fact what happened with the project was because the commitment level was quite high for the first 4 weeks being intensive, it sort of self-selected so that I actually ended up with the more motivated students choosing to do it, which meant we had 10 students, several of whom had been homeschooled, and I know that'll interest, I think, Dottie, because I think, Dottie, do you have an interest in homeschooling? And I know Joe does. So hopefully you'll find, yeah, I'm very aware of yours, Joe, so I'm hoping that some of this will be of interest to everybody. And I know Gareth and Ian, I'm pretty sure you both work with adults, so hopefully it will be interesting. The objectives were that students would learn some online learning skills. They complete up to 3 of the adult literacy units from general education certificates. Now these are at 3 levels, but luckily they are very similar, so you can differentiate by the level of work produced. And they also were meant to gain some digital literacy and safety skills, because it's one of the things that I think certainly in vet we do very badly. We don't help people to stay safe online. Okay, so the team, there was me, there was Phil, because my colleague that was supposed to be doing this from work went sick, and I was struggling, so I managed to persuade work to let me bring Phil in to help. And there's Mokey, Lena, who is a colleague from work who works in literacy and numeracy, the same as I do, and has done a bit of online stuff in the past and was really keen to start having a look and exploring. Okay, what did we do? We had a short, intensive startup and I stuck with the old Illuminate because I think it's easier for students. And it was short and intensive. We did a lot of action learning, so we played around with lots of Web 2 technologies, and we used blogging and some supplementary resources, some of which were on the LMS. This is how it looked. The day was split up, and this was just for the 4-week startup. So if anybody wants to comment or ask questions about this one, please do. We started with a 2-hour virtual class session each morning, and that included things like PowerPoints like this, interactive activities, and demonstrations using AppShare. So that was synchronous, and the outputs from that were student progress and student feedback, because I got a lot of feedback on those sessions each time. And they were delivered variously by myself, Phil, and Nikki. Then we had the rest of the day where they worked online, but one of us was always available in the virtual classroom. So if a student got stuck, it's just like in a normal classroom, they could ask a question. They could just jump in and ask and get help. And during those daily tasks, we used Symbaloo, the course blog, SlideShare, Prezi, and we would coach them through things. And they used a whole range of different activities using different Web 2 tools. And we used a lot of feedback and email support throughout that as well. Sometimes they wouldn't jump into the room, they'd just send us an email, because sometimes they didn't need to jump into the room. And they would also be submitting work through email, and ultimately on their blogs as draft posts, which they would then say, hey, can you look at my draft? And then we came back together in the afternoon very briefly for half an hour, although often it was less than half an hour, just with some whiteboards to have a quick virtual review of how everything had gone that day. Does that look like it makes sense to everybody? Has anybody got any comments? Anybody want to ask any questions? No? Okay, everybody's very quiet. You're very welcome to keep typing and put your hands up. Thank you, Ian. It's nice to know you're all still there. Okay, so this is how we went with the daily stuff. Reading and writing activities and new tools and how-tos in the virtual class. Now you'll see I've actually put the links beside this list. So I'm going to give you a very quick 5 minutes, for which I'm going to put up a timer, to go and have a very quick look at these student blogs. In fact, I'll give you 4.5 minutes now because we've already spent some time. Just go and have a quick look and see the sorts of things that they were doing would be good. I was contemplating doing this as an app share, but I think it's much better for you to go and have a look at yourselves. And I'll just start the timer now. And if anyone wants to make any comments, put your hand up and I'll give you the microphone. Now I've got to be very patient and remember to keep quiet for 4 minutes. The silence is intentional, everybody. Although I suppose some of this I need to still talk about a little bit. Yes, this silence is intentionally blank. I like it. So, the first thing I needed to do, obviously, for them to be online a lot was to get them to do avatars, because the majority of them, although not all, were under 18, and I personally don't feel it's all that appropriate for under 18-year-olds to be using their own images, their own faces, as avatars, and I know that most school systems frown on that as well. So, and we use Mangatar, which I think worked very well, and they loved it. They had a really great time playing with those. And we use my old friend Toondoo for digital safety cartoons. They use Wordle and Tuxedo quite a lot because that's actually they're both quite good for very good for literacy students, because they can do things like make sure they've got their spelling right before they produce them. They can choose words about particular topics, and that's always a good way of extending and considering vocabulary. They use Mokey to talk about employability skills. And we use SlideShare and Prezi several times, including for semi-digital stories. I hope is everybody doing okay with finding the links? All the links work, I hope. Good, I'll give you a bit more silence now. When we finish this few minutes of looking at these blogs, I would really love it. Okay, I was going to ask people to give me a comment, but Ian, it may be that you're on a low bandwidth, in which case I sympathise. I will post the recording link, hopefully a little sooner than I've been doing so of late, and then you'll be able to check them on the recording link as well. But I'd love some comments about what you think once we finish, preferably with audio so it's not me talking all the time. Yeah, they did. I was really pleased with them with the Vokies, because they had to be quite brave. Anybody like to grab the microphone and talk about it? And make a few comments on the different strategies, the different things we use. If not, I'll move on, because I know I've got a huge amount of stuff clustered into this hour. Everybody cool if I move on? Smiley faces if you are, please. Okay, looking cool. The blogs played a really big role, and okay, you guys know all about blogs anyway, but I've got a blogging link here. Now you should be able to click on the link and answer the question by just putting in that code, whichever code applies to you. And what I'm going to do now is to just share, if I can find it. I'll share in a moment. I won't do it quite yet. The graph, so that we can see what's coming up. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, everybody. Okay, I can see people are starting to vote. Okay, now I'm going to share the results. Okay, can you tell me if you can see this, everybody? Can you give me a smiley face if you can see? Yes, good. So if you can click on the link and put it in, we've got 2 people so far who voted. Is the link not working? Oh yes, very true. Thank you, Phil. Phil's just reminding me that I probably need to put this link. Whoops. Okay, let me just go. Okay, you can see the link. Who did we just get? Somebody else. Hi, Sandra. Okay, we're partway through. Sandra, we are doing a vote on what we know about blogging, and we're doing it through Poll Everywhere for change. So if you can, everybody, hopefully on the chart page here you can see the link you need to put in, and if you can type that in, or I did have it on the page when I wasn't sharing the chart. This is a bit of an experiment. It's the first time I've. Oh, now we've. Yeah, Phil. Okay, we're not getting the sharing properly. Let me just do something about this. Let me try again. Oh, I so hate this. Sorry, everybody. There, can you see it now? I hope.
I can see your application.
So you can see the chart. No, the link is at the top. Phil, the link is at the top of above the chart. You won't be able to click on it in there. You'll have to type it in. It was on my original page, but of course, with the new version of Blackboard Collaborate, it appears on top and you can't see the whiteboard at the same time. And this, like I said, this one's a bit of an experiment. It's the first time I've tried. Hi, Gail. It's the first time I've tried Poll Everywhere on Illuminate. Okay. Phil, I'm telling you, it's not clickable on that page. You have to copy it. Okay, sorry everybody. Phil and I are having a slight argument here in the middle of this. If you look at the top of the chart, you will see it says submit a code to http://pollev.com. If you can copy that into your browser, you should be able to then vote. And apologies for the confusion. Like I say, this is an experiment. It's the first time I've tried doing this way. And thank you, Phil, for putting it in. Oh, Joe, sorry. Thank you, Joe, for putting it in. To vote, Sandra? No? You just submit a code and vote? You just, I don't think you now I'm confused. Be interested if anybody else is managing to vote. yeah, you just type in them. You just go to the link and type in the number. Now this is something that is, aha, somebody else just voted. Thank you. It's one of those things. I actually don't like the way this happens, because you can't just keep moving the page around. Apologies, everybody. Because it appears on top of your whiteboard, I have a bit of a problem. Oh, now somebody else. Good, we've got 4. Oh, yes. I hope you can all see all these. I love this because it appears as you vote. Okay, have we got lots of people voting? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Got 5 voters so far, which probably means that Dottie hasn't voted. Okay, so there we go with the vote. So pretty well, you're all familiar with blogs, which I knew you would be, but it's a good way to have a little play. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and get back to the whiteboard. And move to the next page. And there's the chart link. Okay, so this is thank you, Gail. Okay, so this is a little bit more about how we worked. We had a course blog. I know often when you see things like the blogging challenge, it says a class blog. This wasn't a class blog, this was a course blog. So it wasn't for the students to blog on, it was for me and the other facilitators to put things up that were useful for students, and for students to comment and be commented back to, and so on. So again, we've got a link there for a course blog post for you to have a look at, and some student comments at the bottom of the next post. And the students were quite apprehensive, and most of the comments in the early stages were the standardly, oh, what a nice post, or that sort of thing. But I did get them to do a whole session, a whole thing themselves on good commenting. And I used some links from the blogging challenge about good commenting, including a really great one done by some very young children. And my students really picked up and ran with that and did their own little posts on good comments. And although it helped to some extent, they still had a bit of a tendency to revert back to the non. Hi Rob, nice to see you with us. Sorry, we're sort of halfway through. Talking about how we ran this pilot project, and we've used some links and examples. And then of course the students started to make comments on each other's blogs, which was really great because it helped to develop a sense of community. And the student blogs, they wrote draft posts, which I then gave them feedback on for them to correct their English and so on before we posted. And we've got writing instructions example. Yes, Sandra, I had to try and find a way of writing a report that would entertain my students, and that was probably the best I could come up with. It also got chosen because underwater basket weaving is what Phil used when he was talking about I can't remember. Oh, doing their portfolio, I think, or doing their courses, and underwater basket weaving is a really. Whoops, we've lost Ian again. He's definitely having internet problems. Okay, so again, check out the blogs, the writing instructions. I'll put the links underneath because I was a bit short of time and I didn't have time to make them sit properly in the way that I normally do as live links. So they're just underneath the links, the statements. So we had peer comment and feedback. We had students giving comments on the post, on each other's posts, and we had lecturer feedback through the same process. Can everybody just give me a smiley face when they're happy to move on? And once we've got a few of you ready to move on, I'll move on. Okay, looks like we're cool to move on. What we did daily was that we actually used the LMS. Not ideal, but it was something they needed to be familiar with because most of the maths is on the LMS, and we use a lot of quizzes in the maths for formative assessment, so they needed to be familiar with that. Also put their virtual class recording, so every morning's virtual class session of 2 hours was recorded and made accessible to the students through the LMS. We put these tasks up as PDFs, basically because I had students who didn't have Windows, so I wasn't going to use Word if I could help it. I had to use Word and OpenOffice a couple of times because I needed them to fill things in, and my organisation doesn't give the average lecturer access to being able to write PDF forms. So I couldn't do them as forms that they could just fill in. But anyway, we used the daily tasks for PDFs with lots and lots of links in them. Initially to Symbaloo's, which gave them various other links. So again, if you want to have a look at the Symbaloo link, you'll see that's the one on staying safe online. And the daily task, which we haven't got accessible because it was, when I originally set this up, it was on the same folder, and I'm not going to share it because I think we've got people with bandwidth issues, so I'd better not go there today. Yeah, Rob, I used Symbaloo for almost all of this, and I just made separate pages for the different topics that the students needed, and then I was able to write their daily tasks as okay, visit this Symbaloo page. Now go to the red tiles and compare these 3 sites and things like that. And that worked exceptionally well. And I had at least one, I think 2 students who decided they wanted to play with Symbaloo themselves and started their own, so that was really good. Yes, I think you're right. But I suppose probably that's why I like it, because my background's in science. I think the nice thing about it is that you can colour code it, and that's great for literacy students because you don't have to say find the one labelled blah. You can say go to the red tiles, which I did quite a lot. I used the colours a lot, and then the students did and then the students had course blog posts to back up what we did in the in the Illuminate sessions, and the blog posts were things like using email in the course, which also went into writing formal and informal emails. So all the way through, we're trying to hit the literacy objectives, but also keep them doing things that they thought would be fun. I haven't played with Windows 8, so that's obviously something I've got to go and look at. Okay, so altogether, what we're trying to do is to walk that fine line, because one of the issues with online students, especially with online students that are remote, because I never met my students, I only met one of them, and that was because her mum wanted to meet me herself, and so she brought students up to college to meet me. One of the issues is always that students get lost. And also, they sometimes, if you give them total free choice, they will often not discriminate between the poor and the not so poor resources. And part of this was about teaching what were good resources. Okay, Gail, what I mean by getting lost in the internet is they go to something that you send them to, and then there's a link to something else, and a link to something else, and a link to something. And before they know where they are, they're 15 links away from the original objective. And what they've done is they've not focused on the task. I think that kid's in everybody's class. Absolutely. So what I did with Symbaloo was I enabled them to have choice, because I gave them a series of links. And they looked at them all and they chose the one they wanted to work with on the whole. So that gave them a measure of independence and freedom and ownership, because they had choice. And the other issue that we have a lot with, well, I have with students choosing completely their own stuff from the internet, is if I've got 30 or so online students and I ask them to compare 3 websites that do X, Y, Z, if they all go off and get 3 different websites, that's 90 websites I've got to look at. Whereas if I give them several to choose from and say, okay, choose 3 of these and do this, then that limits my time input, because there's a huge, lots of people say that teaching online classes are less demanding of time for the lecturer, the teacher. But that's not so at all. They're actually more demanding if you do them well, at least that's my opinion. So we're also looking for safety, as opposed to freedom, or in conjunction with some freedom. Because these are literacy students and not all of them were high level, it's important to scaffold, because otherwise they don't really know where to go, they get lost. Anybody got any comments or questions? Please feel free to write in the text chat, as most of you are doing, because I do love to be able to answer the questions as you go along, because that way we don't lose the flow. Okay, so it worked pretty well. We had 10 out of 13 who started, actually completed the entire course in the end, but they completed their first 3 units in 4 weeks. They developed some good study habits that carried over. I couldn't stop these students working. They were sending me emails at night and at weekends and all over the place, which was fabulous. It just meant I was responding at all sorts of times, because for me one of the critical things about working with online students is that you have to respond quite quickly, otherwise they get bored or they get disinterested because they're not getting enough responses. Unit completion rate of over 90%, and the usual in the particular adult literacy course that I teach in, because it tends to get a lot of people who don't really want to be there, is less than 10%, and not much more than that, if that, in face-to-face. So this is 90% on an online course. Yes, we had that intensive start-up with a lot of virtual class, and then we just phased it out so that they had less virtual class contact each week for the rest of the course. If you want to see what the students thought, just try that link and go to our Lino It. And let me know when you're happy for me to move on. Rob, I've been in Hangouts a few times. They're not something I probably use with my students, because they're rural, regional, and we don't use video in Blackboard Collaborate because of bandwidth issues, plus the fact that a lot of my students don't have an awful lot of money, and download can be expensive in our part of the world. And I think that's one of the things that varies from country to country such a lot. I have been in Hangouts quite a lot, but not, I don't, okay, individual scaffolding online, Gail, that was, to a large extent, that happened with the drop-in, the middle of the day sessions. I'm not sure you were there when I was talking about the model, but with the intensive startup, we started with 4 weeks of 2-hour sessions in Illuminate in the mornings, and then a lecturer available there all day. And I guess what happened is that once I got the students comfortable, and you know, because I'm reasonably happy online, I got them interacting and typing and talking very quickly. And then they started talking to each other, and so they were comfortable, they felt safe in the learning environment. They were very happy to jump in when they had a problem. One of my students was severely dyslexic, and we did quite a lot of different things with him by doing a lot of his feedback actually in virtual classroom, where we would put up the whole of his stuff up, and then we would work through there together, highlighting bits or saying to him, okay, find the next words that you haven't spelt right, think about the sounds of words and all those sorts of things. So that's how we individualized it quite a lot using that process. And most of the students were planning to go further on, and I've already had some feedback from one. She's got into the visual arts course she wanted on the strength of what she did with us, so I'm really pleased. Okay, so relevance to you and your students. What I'm going to do is send you on a little roaming activity now. We have 7 following whiteboards, and I'm going to give you access to those so that you can roam between them. Yeah, thanks, Rob. When I am trying to convince my colleagues about this, they are in vocational education, so there's a lot of hands-on practical stuff, and sometimes they'll say, but this stuff isn't relevant because it's not practical, and I tend to raise videos and those sorts of issues. Okay, I'm going to give you access to these 7 whiteboards. If you have a look through the 7 and see the topics, choose at least 4 of the tools and try and think of one very specific task. No, I said vocational, Rob. I teach in vocational education, so I teach literacy and numeracy, but most of my colleagues are teaching vocational courses like automotive, electrical, business, those sorts of things. Okay, so try and think of one specific task or activity that you could use each of the 4 tools you've chosen with a specific student group. And I did this with my colleagues in a face-to-face session, and they walked around a whole series of A1 chart pages and wrote on those physically. Okay, let me just give you access. Now you should have got a red line around your whiteboards now, and you should be able to move around between the whiteboards. So you can come back to this one if you can't remember what you're supposed to do. I'm going to give you, what's the time? I'm going to give you 5 minutes again. But go and have a look at all of those whiteboards and add your comments and thoughts about what you might use that particular tool for. And with a specific group if you have one. Now I know Joe, you're not teaching, but you always have a huge number of ideas because of your particular interest in gifted and talented and 2E students, so I know you'll be fine. And Sandra, I know you're not teaching, but likewise, you always have these brilliant ideas about the different groups you could do things with. Okay, can anybody please let me know if you're having trouble moving around the whiteboards? And let me start the timer. Okay. You could indeed, Joe. You can relate it to anything that you choose. It's only because I wanted something quite specific, because there's a great tendency if you've got people, certainly from my area of vocational education, they will tend not to be specific. And I wanted them to really focus, and I guess I like people to really focus on what they could do with students that they have taught in the past or they do teach or something like that? And don't forget to move on to the 7th one. Don't forget to go and look at all of them, please. And what we'll do when we run out of time is to go through them and have a look at them all. And I'd better shut up and give you time to think. Oh, okay. Joe, you should be able to just move to the next slide at the top. They should have some arrows, Joe. Okay, I might give you a little bit extra time, as Joe's been a bit stuck in one place by the sound of it. Okay. How's it going? If you're still writing stuff, then let me know and I'll give you a little bit longer. I did notice that the last time I looked, nobody'd actually written anything on the last of the slides. Oh, we've got something on that one now, good. So we might just go and have a look and see what everybody's written. Rob, you're a typical student. I don't really mind what people do as long as we get some interaction and people doing things on whiteboards. So and also something we can talk about. Okay, I'm going to drag everybody back to me now. Okay, so is everybody now on the first page, the one called Timbaloo? Can you give me a smiley face if you are? If I've dragged you all back to the same page. Okay, good. Okay, let's see what we have here then. Can you guys just give me a green check mark if you put a comment on this one? Just so that we can see. Okay. Anybody who put a comment on this one, would you like to grab the microphone and tell us a little bit more about what you wrote? Somebody put chunking, and that's to some extent what I've used it for as well. Okay, Rob, would you like to grab the microphone and tell us a little bit about it? If you're not familiar with how it works in Blackboard Collaborate, you click the talk button to talk and click it again when you've finished, and I'll just disconnect mine and you can talk.
Hi, do I have voice now? Yes, I do. Yeah, so I just use it for chunking. It's kind of like Windows 8, or it's kind of like I use it for a variety, but it just sorts in a visual way different windows on different topics, and I might use that with international students on any topic. Well, logistics, new product development, or whatever. And then I might have them create it as well. So that's how I apply it. Back to you.
Thanks. And we could hear you, or at least I could hear you loud and clear. Okay. So yeah, and chunking, Gail, as Rob said, is sort of putting stuff into appropriate sized lumps for learning. And yeah, you could use it for chapters of a book. So I put that. That's a really great idea. Yes, it is curation, isn't it? In a way, the way I tend to use it is almost like chapters, but also like I'll have a lot of different things on one Timbaloo, but not all students will necessarily go to all of those. Depends what level they're at. But then it does mean that if they're struggling with something, I can send them back to the previous level stuff very easily on the same through the same page of links. Okay, I like the web quest idea too, because that's great for young students. Okay. Okay, yeah, or if they rush through, you can send them to others. Quite right, Joe, you can. Okay, let's look at the course blog thought. Writing and expressing thoughts. Who did the one with the peer teachers? Was that you, Rob, or was that Gareth? Or okay, it was Gail. Gail, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Okay, Gail, we couldn't hear you. I don't know why your audio was not working. Do you want to try again, or shall we move on? Encouraging collaborative learning, yeah, because I was getting quite a lot of comments on the course blog from students. I was asking them to comment. Okay, we'll move on then. Okay, student blogs. I love journalist wannabes. It's, for me, one of the critical things about student blogs is they get an authentic audience. And for literacy students, I think that's quite important, because if they're just writing for their teacher and it's not real, then they tend not to write so well. I've certainly found that students write better once I give them blogs. Anybody want to comment on this page? If you do, please put your hand up and I'll give you the mic. Yeah, and the great thing about the great thing for me about the blogs that we use, I mean, okay, we use EduBlogs because we've got an EduBlogs campus at the moment. The great thing about that is that they can actually they can make an individual post private or public. They can make them so that, well, and as the lecturer, the teacher, I can have a management control over their blog. So if somebody posts an inappropriate comment, I can take it down very quickly and easily. And that's important, particularly when you're working with students under 18. And particularly when you're working with a platform that is badged for your organisation, because you don't want students posting things that are inappropriate. So it's good to have that type of management access if you need it. Having said that, I didn't need it once for my students. I did need it a few times when spam comments were posted, and until my students learned to discriminate spam comments from real comments. No, I've never used Tumblr either. I'm a Twitter person, really. I use Facebook because a lot of other people do, that I'm in links with. Okay. Whoops, go back. Yeah, Joe, I guess that's you that was using blogging with your young students. Okay, Toondo. Toondo, for those people who came into the session after we just mentioned it and had a look at what the students did, it's cartoon making. And I use it a lot, because literacy students are not generally noted for their strong desire to write reams. So it's a way to get them writing a little bit but keeping it fun. And I use the cartooning ones for things like digital safety. They actually looked at quite a lot of cartoons, but they also looked at a whole stack of websites about digital safety issues and evaluated one of them of their own choice, and then chose a topic to do the cartoon on. So you can use those cartoons in lots of different ways, and I do use them a lot. Not Flipper and Flapper, but Kipper and Flipper. That's my one that I use if I'm doing cartoons for PDs for my colleagues. I have Kipper and Flipper. Flipper's a blue dolphin-y like things that ask the questions, and Kipper's the facilitator that comes back with suggestions as to how you might do things, and is an orange goldfish. Yeah, it is similar to extra. It is similar in the sense that it's static. It's just images, not video as extra normal is. I would like to use extra normal, but I find it doesn't like my bandwidth very much. So it would certainly not like my students' bandwidth. Okay. Wordle and Tagxedo. Wordle and Tagxedo are great fun to use, and I think it works really well for most of my students. And it's interesting. I do know quite a lot of, through my networks, a lot of English as a second language teachers and they seem to use Wordle and or Tuxedo a lot. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, Sandra, how different we all are about the things we prefer. I suppose they appeal to me because of the fact that it's a good way to get students to do something a little bit literate and find it fun. Anybody want to talk about what they've written? I think it's good to use as a stimulus as well. You can put up a Wordle and on a topic and then get a discussion going. Okay, Mokey. Okay, Mokey is the talking avatar. Again, if you were a little bit late coming in, you'd have missed the link that shows an example. And again, I use this because it means that you can have a talking image that isn't the student on video. Because again, with the young students, not really, Rob, I'm used to it. I just assume that you'll catch up later if you want to. Okay, Mokey is really good to use for little snippets. And I know quite a lot of language teachers use it to get their students to answer questions in the language that they're learning. I found it really good because it enables me to get the students to say something, but because they're using the avatar image, not their own, they don't feel so shy if they're going to be shy. And it's the sort of thing that can work very well with Indigenous students who might be sometimes shy because it's a cultural thing. Rob, I'll give you the mic.
Hi, I've just been experimenting with, if you can't tell, I like this G+ platform where it can be used. And for instance, in languages, you can do an instant record back and forth. But I've also learned that, when I use these Hangouts, I use them mobily, and I think they get tired of looking at me, and they prefer to look at things I'm looking at. So I take the back side of the camera, and students could do that as well. They could show me what they're looking at and then talk about it, or they could show a picture of a cartoon or an avatar or whatever. So it's kind of an interesting, different way of doing things. And I change the way that I teach about every other day, like many of us probably do. We adapt. But thought I'd throw that in there because when I see this Mokey thing, it might be like little chunks, and it's instant record, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and then you're done, and then just keep going back and forth.
Yep, just another solution. There are so many different ways of doing things. That's one of the things I try to do is I keep changing things so that students don't get bored. Okay, slideshow and Prezi. SlideShare and or Prezi. We use these quite a bit. Anything that you can do through PowerPoint, you can convert to SlideShare, and anything that you can do with PowerPoint, you can probably make more exciting with Prezi, is how I would probably phrase it. They're great for students to do things to embed in their blogs because you can't really, well, I don't like the sort of trying to put PowerPoint into a blog. I'd much rather do it as Prezi makes me dizzy. It depends how it's used, Rob. I don't use it in a way that makes people dizzy, and neither do my students because it was me that showed them how to use it, insofar as I showed them at all, which I didn't. They mostly learned on their own. Okay, so we've shared some ideas. Now, this is what came out of my session with my colleagues. I did a session on this for my colleagues and got them, as I say, doing a walkabout physically using A1 paper and writing. And they actually came up with a whole series of things that they could do. And you can see, and yeah, you could well do, because it's the standard Mokey one, I think, or fairly standard Mokey one. It's one of my students anyway. And some of them didn't stick to the rules, Rob. They wrote about all the different topics on one sheet. But this was just what they came up with in their time. And they had I played some music and they walked around the room, and you can see this is we have a childcare lecturer here who would use something like that as an instruction set for a high-risk skill. So they came up with some really good ideas for how they could use them in their own course areas, which was pleasing. Yeah, I just took photographs of them, Rob, and to put them in, because when I originally put this is up in something similar to this, is up in SlideShare, and when I do something that's interactive, I don't usually just put it straight up on SlideShare, because it's got all these blank pages where people do things. So I usually try and put it with the whiteboards in it as they were at the completed stage. Okay, any questions? We've got one more poll in a moment. I think we've had questions and chat as we've been going on, but I'm very conscious of the time. Okay, please give me some feedback. Now you should be able to click on that link, but just to, not sure I can copy this. When it's a link, it's actually quite difficult to copy them. If you click on the link, you should be able to go to the poll and just type in one of the numbers, which you can see down here. So your feedback on what how the session worked. Oh, hang on a second. Let me have a look. I wonder why not. It says web devices. Okay. Well, it says web devices, so let me just see if I can. The other one was fine, wasn't it? Oh, I'm getting responses. I'm getting responses coming up, so who was having problems? Yeah, you'd be better off going for the whiteboard link, I think. I suspect the one that Phil's given you isn't. Ah, good. I'm glad it's working now. What I'm going to do in a moment is share what we've come up with. Okay, I hope everybody can see the poll results. Whee, somebody else has just voted. And if you are having problems, please let me know. No, you don't, Rob. You should just be able to click on that link, which you now can't see. Let me just try that. Can you see it now? If you click on that link on the whiteboard page, you should be able to just put in one of the code numbers. And I'll switch back to the results once someone else comes up, once someone else votes. At the moment we've had 5 votes, 2, 4, 5. That's probably more or less it, isn't it? Apart from, I guess Phil's probably voted. Okay. Everybody done? Can we move on? Ah, okay. Okay, that's the chart list. Okay, so what we took a look at was the delivery model. Some of the web tools we use, examples from the student activities, and the relevance. Now, I'm just going to put one new page up now, and I'm going to say best takeaways. Okay. Any other comments and feedback? Best takeaways, please. If you have any of those sorts of things to add. Okay, Rob, I can't at the moment. I have to go to work. So, otherwise I would probably join you. But I have to shoot off to work fairly smartly. I hope you have, I've just been told Dottie, I hope she had a great time. She has a great time next week, but she's already gone. Okay, I have to go to work, so I have to say these quickly and then go. Thank you for coming, everybody, and I will look forward to catching up with you another time. Next week, hopefully, for some of you at least. Okay. Let me do my saving. I'm not going to be responding. I'm turning off my microphone so that I can save. If you want to use the microphone in chat or something, then please feel free. I will be opting out as soon as I've saved everything because I have to go to work.